If you want to eliminate 90% of your financial stress, there's a specific dollar amount that changes everything. And it's not what you think. Most people believe financial milestones are arbitrary numbers, but there's actual psychology and mathematics behind why $10,000 creates a dramatic shift in how you navigate life. Alright, now, before we go deep on this, let me introduce myself. Hi, I am Jonathan Harrington. I spent 30 years as a banker, watching thousands of people build wealth from nothing. I was 16 when I joined a bank as an intern, and here's what I learned. The difference between people who escape financial stress and those who stay trapped isn't income. It's identity. I've seen engineers making $120,000 per year who are broke, and I've seen teachers making $45,000 who retire millionaires. The gap isn't money, it's mindset. So in this video, I'm breaking down exactly what happens when you save your first $10,000. Not just financially, but psychologically. Because the truth is, this milestone doesn't just change your bank account, it rewires how your brain makes every decision for the rest of your life. Here's what's coming. First, the psychology of why $10,000 eliminates most financial panic. Second, how this amount creates a compound effect that accelerates everything else. And third, the exact tactical path to get there, even if you're starting from zero. Stay with me. This isn't theory. This is 30 years of watching real people transform. Now, let's start with what most people already understand about saving money. Having an emergency fund is good. Everyone knows this. Financial advisors tell you to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Your parents probably nagged you about it. It's basic advice. But here's what 95% of people miss about emergency funds. The real benefit isn't the money. It's the brain chemistry shift that happens when you see that 5-figure balance for the first time. Let me explain. When you have zero savings, every decision feels dangerous. Your car make a weird noise, panic. Your boss mentions restructuring, panic. Your laptop starts glitching, panic. This isn't just stress, it's cortisol flooding your system. Neuroscientists have proven that financial insecurity keeps your body in a constant state of fight or flight. You're literally living like a prey animal, scanning for threats 24/7. But when you hit $10,000, something fascinating happens. That same car noise shifts from panic to mild annoyance. Your brain processes it completely differently. Not because you suddenly love spending money on repairs, but because you've moved from survival mode to problem-solving mode. This is what I call the panic annoyance shift, and it's the foundation of every good financial decision you'll ever make. Here's how this plays out in real life. Let me introduce you to two people, Ryan and Graham. Ryan makes $65,000 per year, zero savings. When his check engine light comes on, he immediately spirals. How much will this cost? Can I put it on a credit card? Should I ask my dad for money? He loses sleep. He's irritable at work. The stress bleeds into everything. Graham makes $58,000 per year. He has $10,000 saved, same check engine light. His reaction? Annoying. I'll take it in Saturday. He books the appointment, goes back to his coffee, doesn't think about it again. Same problem. Completely different psychological response. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Ryan's stress makes him worse at his job. He's distracted, anxious, making mistakes. His boss notices. No promotion this year. Graham's calm allows him to focus. He's sharp in meetings, confident in negotiations. His boss notices. $7,000 raise. Over 1 year, Graham's emergency fund didn't just save him from panic, it indirectly earned him $7,000 more than Ryan. That's a 70% return on his savings, and he didn't invest a single dollar in the stock market. Read that again. The emergency fund didn't make Graham rich, it made him confident, and confidence compounds. When you're not constantly worried about survival, you make better decisions in general. You sleep better, you're more productive, you're more patient with your family, you negotiate harder at work because you're not desperate. Financial stress affects everything, and removing it unlocks mental energy. You can redirect toward actually building wealth. This is what separates Ryan from Graham. Ryan sees money as something that disappears. Graham sees money as a tool that creates options. Now, most people approach saving like a diet. They cut expenses dramatically. They stop buying coffee, cancel Netflix, and eat ramen for 3 months. They white knuckle their way to $2,000 or $3,000 in savings. And then they burn out. They treat themselves to a weekend trip. They buy a new gadget they've been eyeing, and suddenly they're back to zero. This is the savings, and it's why most people never hit $10,000. Here's what actually works. The people who successfully save $10,000 don't change their behavior temporarily, they change their identity permanently. Let me explain the difference. Behavior change. I'm cutting back on spending for a few months to save money. Identity change. I'm the type of person who has money saved. This sounds like a small wording difference, but it rewires everything. When you see yourself as someone who saves money, you start noticing opportunities you never saw before. You become creative about reducing expenses. You start thinking long term instead of just focusing on immediate gratification. And here's the beautiful part. Saving your first $1,000 is brutal. It requires massive willpower. But saving your second $1,000, noticeably easier. By the time you're working toward your fifth or sixth $1,000, the process feels almost automatic. Why? Because you're not fighting your identity anymore. You're living it. Let's go back to Ryan and Graham. Ryan decides to save. He downloads a budgeting app, cuts his spending, feels proud of himself for 6 weeks. Then his friends invite him to a concert. He thinks, I've been so good. I deserve this. $300 on tickets and drinks. His savings habit dies right there. Graham decides to save, but he doesn't just cut spending. He starts calling himself an investor in his head. When his friends invite him to that same concert, he thinks, investors don't blow $300 on one night. Investors deploy capital strategically. Same invitation, completely different internal response. Graham doesn't feel like he's sacrificing. He feels like he's playing a different game. And when you're playing a game you believe in, the rules feel natural, not restrictive. This is why Graham hits $10,000 in 22 months and Ryan is still at zero 3 years later. Here's the secret. Most financial advisors won't tell you. The hardest part of saving money isn't the math, it's becoming someone who saves money. Most people try to change their actions without changing their self-concept. That's like trying to quit smoking while still calling yourself a smoker. It doesn't work. But when you shift from I'm bad with money to I'm a capital allocator, everything changes. You're not depriving yourself of coffee, you're deploying $5 into your wealth building system. That $5 Starbucks latte, Ryan sees it as comfort. Graham sees it as 0.09 shares of an index fund compounding at 10% annually for 30 years. That's $38 in retirement money. One coffee. You're not broke because you're bad at math. You're broke because you haven't upgraded your identity. Now that identity shift is critical. But here's where people get stuck. They save $10,000 and then immediately face the biggest psychological trap in personal finance. Here's what everyone tells you about emergency funds. Don't touch it. It's for emergencies only. Pretend it doesn't exist. And on paper, that sounds smart. You're protecting yourself from disasters, car repairs, medical bills, job loss. The fund is your safety net, but here's what nobody talks about. The real magic of having $10,000 saved isn't protection, it's opportunity. Let me blow your mind. Most people who save $10,000 never actually spend it on emergencies. Instead, they spend it on opportunities that create more money. Here's why. When you have zero savings, you're constantly playing defense. Every decision is about survival. You can't think offensively because you're too busy dodging financial disasters. But when you have $10,000, your brain finally has permission to think strategically. Suddenly, you notice a $2,000 certification program that could boost your salary by $8,000 annually. Without savings, that's impossible. With your foundation, it's an obvious 400% ROI investment. Or your friend mentions they're starting a business and need a small investor. Without savings, you wish them luck. With $10,000, you have the option to participate in something that could 10 times, or you hear about a rental property that needs $5,000 down and could generate $500 per month in cash flow. Without savings, you scroll past. With savings, you run the numbers. This is the opportunity paradox. The money you save for defense becomes your offense. Let's watch Ryan and Graham navigate the same opportunity. A colleague mentions a coding bootcamp that costs $3,000 upfront, but has a 95% job placement rate at $80,000 plus salaries. Both Ryan and Graham are currently making $55,000 and feeling stuck. Ryan hears about it. He's interested, but he has zero savings, $4,000 in credit card debt, and no way to come up with $3,000. He tells himself, maybe next year. He stays at $55,000. Graham hears about it. He runs the math. $3,000 investment, $25,000 salary increase, 12-month payback period, $25,000 extra per year for the rest of his career. He enrolls immediately. 18 months later, Graham is making $82,000. Ryan is still at $55,000, wondering why he can't get ahead. Same opportunity, Graham had the capital to say yes. Ryan didn't. Over a 30-year career, that one decision is worth over $750,000 in additional earnings, all because Graham saved $10,000. Here's what this teaches us. Wealth isn't built by people who save money and never touch it. Wealth is built by people who save money, then strategically deploy it into opportunities that create more money. The emergency fund isn't a static pile of cash. It's a launch pad. Ryan sees his bank account as a place where money disappears. Graham sees his bank account as a war chest for deploying capital into opportunities. When you shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, you stop hoarding money out of fear and start investing money strategically. But here's the key. You can't think offensively until you've built your defense. That's why $10,000 is the magic number. It's enough to cover most emergencies and enough to invest in opportunities. Let's get real. If you're living paycheck to paycheck right now, $10,000 probably sounds like a fantasy. Maybe you're thinking, I can barely save $100 per month. This will take me 8 years. And you're right. If you only save $100 per month, it will take 8+ years. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you. It gives you the identity of someone who saves. And that identity creates opportunities that accelerate everything else. Let me break down what actually happens when you commit to saving $10,000 month 1 to 6. The brutal phase, you're saving $100 per month. It's hard. You're making sacrifices. You're saying no to things. You've saved $600. You're thinking, this is taking forever. But here's what's really happening. You're developing discipline. You're learning to delay gratification. You're noticing where your money actually goes. These are skills, not just dollars. Month 7 to 12, the identity shift. You're still saving $100 per month, but something's different. It doesn't feel as hard anymore. You've hit $1,200. You start thinking, I'm actually doing this. And then something interesting happens. You get a $200 work bonus. Old, you would have spent it on dinner and drinks. New, you drops it straight into savings. You're at $1,400. Month 13 to 18, the acceleration. You're now saving $150 per month because you found $50 in budget fat you didn't even know existed. You're at $2,300. You feel momentum, then you get a 4% raise at work. That's an extra $150 per month. Old, you would have inflated your lifestyle. New, you banks $100 of it. You're now saving $250 per month. Month 19 to 36, the compound effect. You're saving $250 plus per month. You've hit $6,000. You start a small side hustle because you finally have mental space to think creatively. It generates $300 per month. You bank half. You're now saving $400 per month. 30 months in, you hit $10,000. Not in 8 years, in 2.5 years. Why? Because the person who started saving $100 per month isn't the same person who finished. You upgraded your identity, and that identity created opportunities. Let's watch Ryan and Graham start from the same place. Both make $50,000 per year. Both have zero savings. Both decide to save $10,000. Ryan commits to saving $100 per month. He makes a budget. He cuts Netflix, stops buying lunch, drinks home. He's miserable, but he's doing it. 12 months later, he has $1,200 saved, but he's exhausted. He feels deprived. His friends are living life and he's eating PB&J at his desk. He tells himself, I deserve a break. He books a $1,500 vacation, back to zero. Graham also commits to $100 per month, but he approaches it differently. Instead of thinking, I'm cutting back, he thinks, I'm becoming an investor. He doesn't cut Netflix. He keeps it, but shares the account with his brother and charges him $7 per month. He doesn't stop buying lunch. He meal preps on Sundays and sells extra portions to his coworker for $5 each. He doesn't quit his gym. He downgrades to a $10 per month Planet Fitness. Graham isn't depriving himself. He's optimizing. And because he's thinking like an investor, he starts noticing opportunities. 6 months in, he takes a free online course in Excel. 2 months later, he automates a process at work that saves his boss 10 hours per week. His boss gives him a $3,000 bonus. Graham banks $2,500. 18 months in, Graham has $4,800 saved. His coworker mentions she's moving and needs to sell her used car Kelly Blue Book value, $7,000. She offers it to Graham for $5,500 because she needs cash fast. Graham buys it, drives it for 6 months, sells it for $6,800. Net profit, $1,300. 28 months in, Graham hits $10,000. Ryan is still at zero, wondering why life is so hard. Here's the lesson. Ryan tried to behavior change his way to $10,000. Graham identity shifted his way there. Ryan saw saving as a sacrifice. Graham saw saving as a game he was winning. When you're playing a game you enjoy, you don't burn out, you level up. Till now, we've covered the psychology, the identity shift, and the tactical path. But here's the final piece that most people never connect. Here's what everyone thinks happens when you save $10,000. You feel more secure. You stress less. You have a cushion for emergencies. End of story. But that's not the end. That's the beginning. The real transformation isn't the $10,000. It's who you become while saving it. And that person doesn't stop at $10,000. Let me explain what I call the wealth identity cascade. When you save your first $10,000, you prove to yourself that you're capable of financial discipline. That proof creates confidence. Confidence creates curiosity. If I can save $10,000, what else can I do? Suddenly, you're not just someone who saved money, you're someone who builds wealth. That's a completely different identity. And different identities take different actions. The person who saved $10,000 starts thinking about $20,000, then $50,000, then $100,000, then investing, then passive income, then early retirement. This isn't because they suddenly got smarter. It's because they upgraded their self-concept. And your self-concept determines your ceiling. Here's the truth. Most financial advisors won't say out loud. The person with $10,000 saved is closer to financial independence than someone with zero savings, even if that second person earns twice as much. Why? Because the saver has mastered the most important skill in wealth building. Keeping money income is great, but if you can't keep it, you'll never build wealth. You know people making $150,000 who are broke. Fancy car, expensive apartment, $18 cocktails, but zero savings. Meanwhile, you know someone making $55,000 who has $30,000 in the bank. The difference isn't income, it's identity. Let's fast forward 5 years and check in on Graham Ryan at year 5. Still making $65,000, still zero savings. He got a $10,000 raise 3 years ago, but immediately upgraded his lifestyle. New car payment, bigger apartment, more expensive restaurants. He's making more, but feeling exactly the same level of financial stress. Ryan sees every raise as permission to spend more. His identity hasn't changed. He's still someone who spends what they earn. Graham at year 5, now making $78,000, has $47,000 saved. How? After hitting his first $10,000, Graham started thinking differently. He thought, if I can save $10,000, I can save $20,000. So he did. Then he thought, if I can save $20,000, I can invest $5,000. So he opened a brokerage account and bought index funds. Then he thought, if I can invest $5,000, I can learn about real estate. So he took a course, found a partner, and co-invested in a rental property with $8,000 down. Then he thought, if I can generate $300 per month in rental income, I can start a side business. So he launched a weekend consulting service that generates $800 per month. Each milestone unlocked the next level of thinking, not because Graham is a genius, because he upgraded his identity from someone who saves to someone who builds wealth. By year 10, Graham has $210,000 in assets, $4,000 per month in passive income, and is 7 years away from financial independence. Ryan has $0 in assets, is still living paycheck to paycheck, and is wondering why life isn't fair. Same starting point, completely different trajectories, all because of that first $10,000 identity shift. Read that again. Graham didn't get lucky, he didn't inherit money, he didn't win the lottery, he simply became a different type of person, and that person built wealth because that's what people with that identity do. This is the wealth identity cascade. One decision creates momentum, momentum creates confidence, confidence creates bigger decisions create exponential results. But here's the critical part. None of this happens if you don't save your first $10,000. That first milestone is the domino that tips everything else. Without it, you stay Ryan. With it, you become Graham. Your 45-year-old self is watching you right now. Which version will you be? Ryan, still stressed about rent, or Graham, financially independent and living on your terms? Here's the truth that took me 30 years of banking to fully understand. Money doesn't buy happiness, but money buys options, and options buy freedom. And freedom is the closest thing to happiness that money can actually purchase. That first $10,000 doesn't make you rich, it makes you free from panic. And panic-free thinking is where all wealth begins. Every millionaire I've ever met started here. Not with $1 million, with the identity shift that happened when they proved to themselves they could keep money instead of just earning it. You're not trying to save $10,000. You're trying to become someone who has $10,000 saved. That person makes different choices. That person sees different opportunities. That person builds wealth. All right, guys, that's all I've got for this video. As a recap, we covered the exact psychological transformation that happens when you save your first $10,000. First, the panic, annoyance shift. How $10,000 eliminates 90% of financial stress by shifting you from survival mode to problem-solving mode. Second, the identity shift. Why people who successfully save $10,000 don't just change behavior temporarily, they change who they are permanently. Third, the opportunity paradox. How the money you save for defense becomes your offense, creating options that broke people simply can't access. Fourth, the realistic path. The exact 2.5-year roadmap from $0 to $10,000, even if you're starting with just $100 per month. And fifth, the wealth identity cascade. How that first $10,000 isn't the end goal, it's the beginning of a completely different financial trajectory. If you're staring at a bank balance that looks like a phone number from the 1950s, don't panic. Start small, stay consistent, and remember this. The person you become while saving your first $10,000 is infinitely more valuable than the money itself.